Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be going over the last chance qualifiers for North America, Brazil, and Europe regarding the Manchester Major, and then at the end we'll also look at all of the teams that have qualified for the Major because we now know all 20 of the teams that have done so. Starting with North America because theirs happened first chronologically, and yes, there are actually a few more LCQs in the smaller regions, but we're just going to look at these big three regions. Okay, these are the 8 teams that were fighting through the LCQ. You'll notice Los didn't make it here, and they're the only North American League team that is not here that hasn't already qualified. So Dark Zero, M80, and Beast Coast, they already qualified, so of course they're not fighting for a spot anymore. They've already made it. I would say probably the favorites coming into this were Oxygen, Space Station, and Sonics. I guess, Luminosity and Wildcard, they're also North America League teams. I don't think it would have been totally unreasonable for them to make it, but again, I feel like these 3 were probably the favorites, and probably Oxygen and Space Station a little bit more than Sonics, given their performances were better, and also Sonics just made the roster change to try to shore that up, replacing Geo with Grixer, and so I sort of had high hopes for them, but then Grixer had, I think it was a shoulder injury, so that really hampers his ability to play. He played reasonably, all things considered, but still, I do have to wonder if he might have played a little bit better had he not been injured. And then we also have Makers, which is Packer, Bino, Kobe Lax, Woos, and Giddy, recently picked up by this org who was in Europe for a very long time. Then we have Los Mangos, JJ Blast, Deity, Rival, Kiru, and Lokes. And then Space Station Academy with Jetcon, Vil, Focal, Fens, and Bay. All certainly underdogs. It would be cool to see any of them make it, but again, there were some pretty clear favorites in my opinion. So this is how the bracket progressed. There's a little bit of seeding going into this, including a match played between some of the teams that fell in the first round of playoffs, but it doesn't really matter. There's no consolation for like second place, so you might have to face tougher opponents, and it sucks if you have to play a hard opponent, I guess, in the first round, but if you would have had to play them in the grand final anyways, you know what, it doesn't really matter. So seeding's kind of whatever here. Maybe if you are one of those low tier teams and you're really just trying to, well, of course you want to make a major, but maybe you do have the secondary priority of making a little bit of a name for yourself. Maybe you do want an easy opponent in the first round so you can show off a little bit more, but for all intents and purposes, it does not matter if you get anything except for first, second through 8th, it's all the same really. So Oxygen versus Space Station Academy, 7-5, 7-4. They gave them a decent fight, but still Oxygen takes it pretty handily in 2 maps, no overtime. Sonics versus Wildcard, also 2-0, but both of them go to overtime. I think we'll see in one of the other LCQs a bit of a feel bad where it goes round 15 on both maps, and that does really suck. But when you win 8-6, it feels at least reasonable. 8-7 feels like it's cut short. Like maybe if we'd played infinite overtime, it could have gone the other way. But if you do lose 6-8, then it is what it is. You lost an attack and a defense in overtime, and Sonics take them down in a couple of close affairs. Luminosity versus Los Mangos, the only 3 mapper of the semis here, and Mangos do take the first map. It looked like maybe they're, I don't want to say the real deal, but maybe they're going to perform better than people anticipated, and I suppose they did. Probably a lot of people thought they would be getting 2-0'd, and they did get kind of smacked, only winning 5 rounds in the next 2 maps, but still, at least they got the 1 map on the board. And then Space Station versus Makers, absolute destruction on Skyscraper, and then at least a close one on Consulate, but Space Station take the 2-0, just like we see from Sonics and Oxygen. And then we have Oxygen versus Sonics in the semis, and it's not close. Sonics just destroy these guys. I mean, let me double check. Actually, I was gonna say this is the least close, but actually the other one is just as not close. Only 5 rounds won by Oxygen, and I don't know. I mean, I thought you might have even said Oxygen were the favorites coming into this matchup, right? Sonics, a bit of a wild card. There's another team called Wild Card, but you know what I mean. A bit of a wild card after their roster change, bringing Grixer back on. Certainly a great player, proven himself time and time again, but that volatility compared to Oxygen's, they were very consistent early on in the stage, and then they fell apart towards the end of the round robin phase. They were still good enough overall to make top 2, but then they lost over and over to get here, right? And I guess they won against Space Station Academy, but they had multiple chances to qualify for the major. They failed to do so against the first team and then the second team, and now here they are failing to qualify in their final chance, and they went out sad. I would have expected a closer match, at least closer maps, if not a map 3, right? But it is what it is. That's the end of the road for Oxygen. Once again, it's been quite a while since we've seen this org at an international event, and the same thing for some of these players. I guess Diaz and Gomez were on M80, and they were going to majors, and then getting grouped and whatnot. but at least they were there. As for Dream, Newers, and Yaga, and I guess Yaga also was at SI with M80 also doing badly. But as for Dream and Newers, it's been quite a while. And then we have Space Station versus Luminosity. This is a rematch of that seeding match I was alluding to. And Luminosity took it down, but that's such a nothing match. They play for, I think, a little bit of money, maybe a few SI points, but they, you know, whoever wins it and loses it, it doesn't matter. They're gonna have to, assuming they both win, they're gonna have to rematch in the semifinals here. It's so dumb. Anyways, 7-1, 7-4, Space Station dominate these guys, just like we saw in the other matchup. Only 5 rounds won by the loser, and that sets up Sonics versus Space Station. And these were my 2 preferred teams. You know, these are probably my 2 favorite teams in general. I guess they've both, since I picked them as some of my favorite teams, undergone a ton of roster changes, and so they're pretty much unrecognizable. But I guess I followed the org, whatever. Space Station take it down, close one on Chalet. I mean, who knows what would have happened on Bank had round 15 of Chalet gone the other way, but Space Station do close it down on Consulate at the very least. So they get the 2-0, not the cleanest 2-0 ever, but still, at least they were convincing in the final map, and that's North America. That is Space Station qualifying. They haven't missed an event in a little while, and so good for them. I guess Sonics also haven't missed an event in a little while. I don't remember off the top of my head. What was the last thing that I am a little bit curious now? I'm not making stuff up, right? We're just gonna check this really quickly because I don't want to look a fool. They were certainly at SI where they did pretty well. They were in Atlanta and Copenhagen. Yeah, didn't do well in Atlanta, but made top 4 in Copenhagen. They were at this. Yeah, so they're on like they were on a pretty long streak of events going all the way back into 2022, but they failed to make it here. And let me go back. Okay, yeah, that's North America. We'll look really briefly at the stats here, just to see if there were any like standout players. And I just want to look at it from this perspective. Adam, the best player on Sonics, and everybody playing pretty reasonably. Grixer was fine, again, considering him coming back, having not played T1 for a stage, and having the injury +4/+1 is pretty fine. J90, once again, the best player for Space Station. Really fine margin over Ashen. These were the 2 real star players for them for the stage, and Iconic finally showing up here after a pretty brutal stage for him, his debut stage on Space Station. And then Luminosity, Wi-Fi, the best player. He's had a lot of great games and a lot of terrible games, so he averaged out. But I guess this was another one of his, 2 good games, I assume. I don't know if he had one really good one and really one kind of bad one again, but their highest rated player. He's really proven himself, I think. I'm excited to see what Wi-Fi has to offer come next stage, assuming we don't see some insane stuff go on with some of the rosters. Yaga, the best player on Oxygen, just a slight bit of redemption, but I mean, what's it really worth? You lost in the semis. You didn't even have a chance at that grand final, and yeah, nobody showing up too hot there. Packer, the best player on Makers. I'm confused why his rating is so high. He only went +3, but he went -4 at entry. I guess his cost and his KPR are high. It must be simple as that because no plants, no clutches. And over on Los Mangoes, you know, some okay performances. You don't expect your stats to be that great when you just lose the best of 3. You know, you're 1 and 2 on maps, but they at least got the 1 map compared to the likes of a few of the other teams that fell in the quarters. And then on wildcard, as we've seen many times, Kansan the best player by a wide margin. This guy's going to need some more backup. He did have some bad games, admittedly, the stage, but he had a lot of really great games, and just a lot of times his teammates were not really backing him up. And then finally SSG Academy Fens having a pretty brutal 2 maps, but what are you going to do? It's just 2 maps, not the biggest sample size. Okay, on to Brazil. So W7M, Black Dragons, Keyed Stars, MIBR, Liquid, Fluxo, NIP, and E1. And these are all, well, it can't be all, yeah. They're all of, okay, what am I trying to say? None of the Brazil League teams missed out on their opportunity. We have E1 Academy here because E1 already qualified. And then, yeah, so they do have 10 teams in their league. So 3 already qualified, 7 of them are here. So unlike Los over in North America, none of the actual T1 teams failed to make it to the LCQ. And okay, W7M versus E1 Academy. Keep in mind, this is, of course, the sort of the old Team 1 roster with Volps and what is it, Dodez, replacing Cameraman and Maya. Okay, it's not that W7M that just won the World Championship, in case you've been a little bit out of the know. And they do take it. They were one of the easily one of the best teams this stage as far as round robin, and I think a lot of people probably thought they would take one of those 3 spots for the major in playoffs, but they failed to do so. But they at least advance out of the quarters here. We have Liquid versus MIBR, absolutely smoked them, 7-1, 7-3. Liquid came to play. They had a terrible, like god-awful start to the stage, and then they almost clawed their way back, and I am a little bit curious. How close did they get at the very end? I don't remember off the top of my head. So let's go here. I know getting sidetracked just a little bit, but you know, I think at this point most of you are used to a little bit of sidetracking. Yeah, I guess they didn't even make it into 7th, but they were close-ish. I think even coming into the last day, had a few results gone differently, then they could have made it. And I think, did they play FaZe? They played FaZe in the very last day, so of course they probably would have lost to FaZe had they played them earlier, but imagine somehow they were playing a different team and they could have got 3 points more easily. This could have been a different result. And had they beat FaZe, had they won 7-5 instead of losing 7-5, they in fact would have made it, because they would have been above E1 on points. And keep this, or well, don't keep this in mind actually. They already qualified. E1 had quite the run. They went from this position all the way to making it to the league final, right? They didn't beat FaZe in the final, but they made it all the way there. Impressive stuff to turn around like that. Anyways, let's go back to the bracket here. Get back on track. Okay, so yeah, that was Liquid over MIBR. Then we have Black Dragons versus Nip, and smoked them on Bank, and then round 15 on Chalet. Ninjas in Pajamas out. They're having, as they tend to do, either a really good stage or a bad stage, and this is just another one of their bad stages. But I guess it's been a little while since they missed a major. I won't actually look at this one, but they were at both majors last year, as well as SI. So they were on at least a 3-event streak. I don't recall if what the last event they missed before that, but they were on a little bit of a streak, and that's now broken. Keystars versus Fluxo. I think this one was surprising. Fluxo made a bit of a run here. They were let me go back. They were they were 0-9. They didn't win a game. They got 1 point, and they they made it all the way to the grand final, as you can see. But they beat Keystars, who I thought were a pretty decent team, but they didn't show up as much as I expected them to. They go out in 2 maps against Fluxo, neither of them going to overtime. And then we have the semis, W7M versus Liquid, and this was a bit of a banger. This was a potential Volps revenge game, but we've seen Volps have some opportunities at revenge, and maybe he's won some of them, but I don't think any of the meaningful ones, because like Liquid versus W7M in the, I guess, Copenhagen Grand Finals, he lost that, of course. They got 3-0'd, right? Or yeah, I think they got 3-0'd, if memory serves. And then here's a chance to make it to the major. I guess they would have had to win one more game, but a chance to make the major, and Volps. I don't think he had a very good game here. I won't pull up the individual match stats, but if I remember right, I don't think Volps showed up especially well. And yeah, he was just on Liquid before the stage, now on W7M once again. And then we have Black Dragons versus Fluxo. Black Dragons take the first map convincingly, but then 7-5, 7-4 Fluxo, just like they did, I guess, reverse order. But in the second and third maps, Fluxo do pretty much the same thing they did against Keystars in their quarterfinals. And then that sets up Liquid versus Fluxo. And these were pretty close, 7-5, 8-7, just about as close as 2 maps can get. They lost by 2 rounds on Oregon, so that could have been a 7-5 or 8-6 or whatever, and then lose by just 1 round on Bank. So they kept it pretty competitive, but no map 3 or anything. Liquid makes it to the major, and I did predict them to make it to the major. I, of course, was not feeling too good about that prediction after the first however many days we saw Liquid play, like 3 or 4 days. But they turned it around to an extent. They at least played better, not enough to make it to the playoffs, but they did turn it around when they needed to most, and they qualified to the major. And I mean, I don't have super high hopes for them, but I think it's possible they make a run. Who knows? They're still Team Liquid. They can still do big things, even if we're sort of past the point of believing they can really, really win a major. Maya on the roster, I think an exciting addition, but it hasn't been as explosive as I would have liked. But maybe come the major, maybe they'll show up a little bit more than they did in a lot of Brazil. And we'll take a quick look at the stats, and yeah, let's group by team again. Nesk on top for Team Liquid, and everybody doing pretty well. Lagonis only going slightly negative on the rating. Resets had a few pretty huge maps after he was, I think, like their worst player throughout those first 4 games or whatever, like abysmal stats, like 18, or I don't even know what it was. He was like minus he had less than a 0.5 KD, I'm pretty sure. Like really, really bad. But he turned it around. He's proven that he can indeed still hang. I thought he was completely finished, but no. Resets came to qualify for the major. On Fluxo, Luka, the big standout player. I think he's been a big name for a long time, but never in the spotlight as much as people expected that he might. And Astro, he is looking a bit like a finished player. I don't know. I think a lot of people are saying it should be curtains for Astro. We'll see what happens. I mean, of course, I don't know the behind the scenes factors, but that's just what people are saying. Okay, ask the big star on Black Dragons. They played 5 maps, so they made it to the semis, but they fell, and Ask, he put up the good fight, but not good enough, unfortunately. Loban, the best player on W7M, and nobody doing too terribly overall. Volp's pretty reasonable. +5 on entry is nice, but again, if I remember right, I want to say he wasn't so hot in the game versus Liquid. And then Keedstar's Daffodil, the best player by a significant margin, and he's, like they're one of their support players, I guess. I don't remember. I don't know. Is Hornetal the support? I don't think so. Why is he playing Thermite Smoke? I thought this guy was like a fragger. My knowledge of Brazil doesn't run super, super deep. But anyways, perplexing to me. I thought Daffodil was their hard support, but I don't know. Maybe they switch roles around or something. Let me know if you are aware. Muzi, once again, the best player for NIP. He's been the best player like over and over and over for quite a while now. And I don't know, he just looks pretty good even when his team doesn't a lot of the time. On MIBR, nobody standing out. And then over on E1 Academy, Mr. 6 Outlaw going pretty big in 2 maps. Okay, moving on to Europe. So the final LCQ, and then again, we'll take a look at those 20 teams overall. So the teams that we have here, Wolves, G2, Fnatic, ENCE, Virtus.pro, Forgotten Days, Wild, and Make Your Destiny. So you're probably familiar with most of these teams. Forgotten Days, you'll probably be familiar with a lot of these players. These are all players that have played in T1 except for Dora. Hungry recently played on Wild. I think YZN was on Secret, and then he was over in like LATAM or something. Now he's back. Sloth was on Heroic. Astro, was he on Secret also? Some of these players have played on multiple European rosters. Anyways, a bit of a leftovers roster, and we'll see what they do in just a minute. And Wild, you will notice that just like they did for at least the last game of round robin, if not more than that, they subbed out Nello for Dodo. And then Make Your Destiny, I don't know who these guys are, but they got some guys here. A lot of them have red names, aka don't have Wikipedia pages. And yeah, the rest of them are, of course, the EUL teams. And I guess same thing as Brazil. This is a 9-team league, and we see 6 of them here. 3 already qualified, so yeah, none of them falling. I guess Los having that unfortunate distinction over in North America. Anyways, Wolves versus Make Your Destiny. First up, 7-5, 7-3. They got an okay number of rounds on the board, but this went the way that everybody expected it to. ENCE versus Virtus.pro. I think a bit of a surprise because probably the favorites I would have picked out for this were certainly G2 and Wolves, both of them and Wolves especially on a really, really long major qualification streak, the longest in the world, I think. And well, I mean, you've seen it down here, that streak has been broken. G2 not on a massive streak, but they were at the last 2 SIs, and they were at the 2 majors in between that. And then they missed Yanshiping, so I think this will be their 5th event in a row, starting with their SI win, and then all of them being top 8. So they have not only made the last 4 events, but they've made top 8 at all of them. And discounting Copenhagen, they've been top 4 or better at all of them. So G2 has shown up a lot and shown up well when they've gotten there. So I expect big things from G2 if they do keep up the streak, because, well, yeah, spoilers, yeah, they're the ones that make it. But anyways, probably Wolves, G2, and I still think a lot of people would have had Virtus.pro as one of the favorites, which is why I came back to talk about this, because they had a pretty poor stage. G2 also kind of poor, but not abysmal. Like Virtus.pro were just really bad, and they were the best European team at 6 Invitational. They made it all the way to 3rd place, one place above G2, but yeah, they just couldn't pull it together. I mean, I think ENCE is a team that look pretty good. I think they're not as sophisticated as they could be at some point. They've been playing together as a roster for quite a while, but they just gotten into T1, and they had that upset win over BDS, the only team to beat BDS in quite some time. And so I think ENCE looking pretty good and taking down Virtus.pro. It was at least close. I mean, at least Virtus.pro didn't get smoked, but no, Virtus.pro at the major is tough. They were pretty consistent last year. They a little bit lackluster at the 2 majors, only making top 11, but then again, they made those majors and SI, and they made top 3 at SI, so some good stuff in there. Anyways, Fnatic versus Forgotten Days, and Forgotten Days take it, surprisingly. I guess they had certainly the players, the experience and whatnot to make this happen, but Fnatic being the T1 team, I think they were certainly the anticipated winner, and they take it in a close clubhouse, but then Forgotten Days smoke them on both Chalet and Oregon. Astro going very big overall in this matchup. And then G2 versus Wild. This would have been a big shocker had Wild managed to take this down. Certainly the worst looking EUL team for the stage, and G2, yeah, they didn't look like as good as you might have expected them to, but it's still G2. I don't think anybody really anticipated them to lose this one. Then we have Wolves versus ENCE, French Showdown. I guess these are the two real French rosters anymore because BDS no longer has a full French roster, only 3 out of 5 of them. And this is the heartbreaker I was alluding to earlier. Round 15, like this feels so terrible. And if I remember right, ENCE was on defense for They had double defense in both overtimes. Yeah, so they won 2 defenses in overtime here, and they won an attack and a defense. I don't think this tells me for sure. I'm certainly on Oregon they had double defense, and then I think they did on Chalet as well. And I guess Chalet is a relatively even map. Oregon not an even map. I think in general on most maps you want defense in overtime, right? You want to play two defenses. You get to play your favorite side, and then assuming you win that, your second favorite site, that should be good enough. And yeah, that just stings so bad to lose both maps. In round 15, ending Wolves' like unprecedented streak, going all the way back to, gosh, what was it? I mean, I think Charlotte was the first event that they got picked up for, and so they were over a 2-year streak, or I guess this would have been, what was Charlotte? It was the May Major, so yeah, it was literally like a two-year streak, 8-ish events. There's like 2 SIs in there. I don't remember, whatever. I don't know, like 8 events, 2 or 3 SIs, like 5 or 6 majors, just crazy streak to lose. Very unfortunate. I kind of expect them to make the run, but they don't do so. I don't know. Do you think they would have beaten G2 had they made it to the grand final? Let me know below in the comments. G2 versus Forgotten Days. This was like close-ish. They got, Forgotten Days pushed overtime on Consulate, and I think a little bit of a comeback from G2. They were up, I want to say Forgotten Days was up like 6-4 or something, or 6-5. I don't know. They had the advantage based on how the first half went. And then G2, they pushed it into overdrive, and they managed to take it 8-6. And that sets up ENCE versus G2, and not particularly close. Smoke show on Nighthaven, then a close cafe, but still no overtime. That is G2 to the major, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, only 1 overtime. So that bodes pretty well. And G2, they are pretty well known for being a lot better in best of 3s than they are in best of 1s. So we'll see them at the major to play, I guess, a few best of 1s, because this system still works that way, where until you're in your qualification or elimination game, right, in Swiss, unless they changed it, you play best of 1s up to that point. But yeah, so we'll see some best of 1s, we'll see some best of 3s. Let's take a look at, I guess let's do the stats just to maintain parity. Benjamaster, perhaps he's back. Who's saying he's back? Okay. Yeah, everybody's fine on ENCE. No real standouts in either direction, but yeah, Benjamaster and Doki, and these are the 2 players you would expect to put up the best stats given the roles and structure of the team. Alamau, I think a little bit uncharacteristically low, although not terrible by any means. Nice to see Uno going only -6 and going +4 here. Word on the street was that he was killing it in scrims, and I guess he didn't absolutely kill it in the matches, but this is a lot better of stats than you sometimes see from this guy. Astro, the best player on Forgotten Days, but everybody is at least reasonable. Deadshot showing up big on Wolves. He's really evolved. He looked really poor when he first joined Wolves for that first stage or so, maybe even 2. And it was still really Mowgli trying to carry, and now we have a just sort of lukewarm performance for Mowgli, but Deadshot keeps up his I don't want to say like super banger performances. Like SI, he had a few good ones, but I think his average was still only okay, and then I think he was pretty good this stage, so he's at least showing up better than he did at the beginning. Shinka, that's kind of tough. I guess he's the hard breach, the hard support player, but still a little bit tough. And then Dodo, actually the best player on Wild, the sub coming in. Kanto and Packball not doing so hot. Packball also the hard support player, I guess, although I don't know. Dodo, I guess maybe also playing some hard support. I'm not sure. I didn't watch that closely. Deepak, the best player over on Fnatic. Jeg's really struggling. Not the hard support player. Doesn't have quite the excuse that the other guys have. And actually one of their support players on the top here. On Virtus Pro, Pasha, he tried his hardest, but unfortunately not enough to get him anywhere. And then Make Your Destiny. Yeah, they didn't get like decimated in the stats department, but obviously it's not going to be great when you lose 0-2 in the fashion that they did. And that does it for the LCQs. Let's take this quick last look at who made the major. So we just saw 3 of them, and I'm sure you know most of these, but in case you don't follow all the regions, here are these teams qualifying directly to phase number 2, so they don't have to play through the whole groups thing. BDS Into the Breach and Secret for Europe, Beast Coast, M80 and Dark Zero for North America, FaZe Clan, E1 and Furia for Brazil, and then Scars, Talon and Bliss representing Japan, South Korea, and Oceania, respectively. And then in phase 1, I'm not going to read out the regions because they're all different, but we have from some LCQs and just from some regular leagues, because that's the way it works. We have G2, Space Station Liquid, Cyclops, Fear X, Cruelty, Bleed, and GK. And sort of a handsome group of teams overall. We see some teams that make major after major after major, and we see some brand new teams. We get to see Into the Breach, we get to see Beast Coast, both of them making their major debuts. It's been a while, I think, since we've seen Secret. BDS, they generally make a ton of majors, but they did miss one last year, so it's nice to see the super team showing up. That's certainly one of the teams to watch. M80, will they show up better than they did last year? It seems very likely because the bar is so low. Dark Zero, they make every major like ever, so no surprises. Same sort of thing with FaZe Clan. E1 making their debut. Expect to see, I don't know, at least some fanfare around them. Hopefully they don't fall too flat. Furia, the reigning double major champions plus SI champions, here to see if they can keep up their streak. Scars, you know, they got smoked at SI, but they at least did well in Copenhagen. Talon, this is the team that signed Pengu and Fabian and seemingly took over South Korea. Let's see if they can actually do anything internationally with the backing of some of the greats of the game. And then Bliss, maybe the best APAC team. I don't know who you think is the best at the moment. Probably the consensus is going to be either Bliss or Bleed, but let me know who you think is number 1. Bleed obviously in phase 1, but that's not really their fault. That's just the structure of the leagues and qualification and whatnot. And yeah, G2, always a major contender. They, like I mentioned before, have had a lot of really solid runs for quite a while now, so expect that again. Space Station, I'll be rooting for these guys as usual, and they've been pretty reasonable. They missed out on top 8 in Copenhagen by just one round. Well, they made top 11. They fell in the last round of Swiss, I should say. And then Liquid, I don't know. Maybe they could make a decent run. Cyclops, they're back. Will they be better than before? Because they were really bad forever. So I don't know. Maybe they'll return to their ways, but hopefully they'll at least be fun to watch. I do think they've changed up their style just a little bit. Fear X return. They were at least a little bit better than at SI than expected. So maybe they'll improve. Possible. I don't know anything about these guys except they come from Mexico. Bleed, again, perhaps the best team from APAC, but I guess is that good enough to make you one of the best teams in the world? Probably not, but I think they at least have a foothold, right? They could maybe make a run. I think people think it's possible. And then the new look GK with the likes of Blaz and Neskin, 6-man roster. I don't know which 5 are playing or if they'll be switching around or whatever. But if past stuff is any indication, probably one of the like Saudi players will have some beast issues and just not be able to play. Who knows? But okay, all right. Give me some predictions. Like, do you think that BDS and Furia and FaZe will just be clearly the best 3 teams? Like, do you think any of them are going to fall flat? Do you think the Furia streak will end? Do you think Talon has what it takes with the help of Fabian and Pengu? Any other predictions? I'd love to hear them. All right, it's been almost 30 minutes, so I guess I should call it quits here. Leave me a like, sub, comment, all that good stuff. Catch you guys next time.